WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know This on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. Each and every week, 2:30 on Tuesdays, we come to you. Show's been on now for about 11 years. We've had some interesting guests. We continue to do that. And today is one of those days that we're pleased to have the Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina here, Mark Robinson. Mark, thank you for coming down and having a conversation with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mark, I looked at your background, native of Greensboro, Army veteran. Thank you for your service with the military. Wife, you're blessed with 2 children and 2 grandchildren. So we can call each other grandpa, I guess, and we'll be in good company today.
Sure.
Wanted to mention, I think to start this conversation, you're a person that appears to me of tremendous drive. There's something that is within you that causes you to want to accomplish certain things. In 2018, you stepped up to the microphone to answer a challenge, and that resulted into over 200 million people viewing your comments. Now, I don't know whether folks listening today understand, that's a lot of folks across the United States. Tell us how you came to that point, and then I want to kind of get a little further into your journey.
Well, back 2018, where I was at in my life, I have been what I call politically aware since the early mid-90s. And I was politically active back then. Also, I was involved with my local party, but got a little disillusioned with the way politics operate and decided that I needed to do some self-improvement, concentrate on myself. So I decided to go back to school. And I went through a series. Was going to school at one time, and my wife started a small business, and we kind of dropped everything and concentrated on that. But when my wife sold that business, I went back to school. And my goal was to be a history professor. So I was going to school full time and working full time in the furniture industry. And that's where I was in 2018. And I decided that I wanted to buy an AR-15. Some friends of mine told me to go to the Greensboro Gun Show and buy that firearm. That'd be the best place to get it. And you have to keep in mind that this was during the midst of the whole March for Our Lives, the David Hogg stuff that was going on. And I was very vocal. I did all my politicking for the most part on social media, on Facebook in particular. And I had made a lot of comments, gained a lot of followers on Facebook, not a whole lot, but, quite a few. And I was very vocal about how I felt about protecting the Second Amendment. Well, when the Greensboro City Council made attempts to cancel the gun show, I was livid. And they announced that they were going to have a meeting about gun violence, so to speak. And I knew what it was aimed at. It was aimed at the purposes of bolstering up the argument to end the gun show. Mm-hmm. And so because I'd been so active on social media, I said, this is a chance to go down and show you support in person. Mm-hmm. And I heard about the meeting the day of the meeting. I had to go to work 10 hours that day, but I got off from work and made the decision that I had to go, and I did. I did not intend on speaking, but once I got there, I felt compelled to stand up and say something, and I did, and I guess the rest of this say is history.
That was pretty amazing, and I've listened to that speech, and your words were on point, and you were pretty adamant about what you told them. And one particular thing I recall, and I won't try to quote, but I'll paraphrase, is that somebody does something with a firearm that results in injury or death, and then it's like they blame the firearm, and they're going to get your firearm, and you hadn't done anything with that firearm. It's almost like a car. If a car has an accident, somebody gets killed, then they're going to get you for that. So that was kind of one of your statements, and it struck me as that was a little bit of pause when I was listening to that.
Yeah, that was my whole point of the speech is that, people talk about the majority in this country. Mm-hmm. People say the majority. The majority in this country are the people who get up, go to work every day, play by the rules, want their rights, want to be left alone, and just try to do the right thing. That's the majority in this country. Mm-hmm. But it seems like every time something goes wrong, we end up, the majority of people, the ones that are doing it right, the ones that are doing it fair, the ones that just want to be left alone, we always end up being the ones who get punished. You know, they want to take away the gun show from us. They want to come and take our guns away. And along with that, it seems like they're picking our pockets all along the way. And so when I was speaking up, I wasn't just speaking up for myself. I was speaking up for every person out there who is just sick and tired of being shoved around by governments that overreach and trample on our constitutional rights. And that was the whole point behind that speech. It really was. I called it 4 minutes of fury based on 40 years of frustration.
I think it's interesting you said, because what I'm hearing you say is that there is a huge majority out there that is silent, but when somebody steps up and speaks on their behalf, do you feel yourself saying what they want to be said? I mean, can you feel that force of people behind you when you say that?
Absolutely. The outpouring after that speech was incredible. I couldn't believe it. I got letters from all over the country. Oddly enough, most of the mail that I got came from California, of all places. And it was every piece of mail that I got was positive. Every piece. We got hundreds of pieces of mail. We got hundreds of phone calls. And of course, you know, the media reached out to us. And I mean, the outpouring was incredible. You know, and the overwhelming thing that people told me every time I talked to them is, you said everything that I believe, or I felt like I was listening to myself, because that's exactly how I feel. And it was incredible. It really was.
And then fast forward, you decided at some point in time, I believe I'm going to do this thing with Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina. How did that come about? And was that a hard decision? Did you have to rationalize over it, or did you just say, this is something I got to do?
Well, you know, after we gave that speech and after it started going viral, we got the opportunity to do a lot of great stuff. You know, we got to do stuff with some really big organizations, and we even got the chance to travel overseas. Went to Nuremberg, Germany to receive an award for standing up for the Second Amendment. Of all places, we got to go to Europe. And it just came down to a thing where we were getting contacted by people who we kept hearing the same overwhelming theme. You know, your videos got X amount of views. If you monetize this, you can make X amount of dollars. All you have to do is get this 800 number, build a brand. I mean, we just kept hearing that. And I'm a very spiritual person. And, you know, I consider my life to be under the guidance of my Lord and Savior. And I really do believe that this nation was founded through his will, because we put our trust in him. And our freedoms indeed come from him. And when he sees those freedoms being threatened, you can look back through our history. Whenever our freedoms are threatened, there's always a regiment of people that raise up to protect those freedoms. I believe the same is true now. And I believe that I was one of those people. And the reason why he had me do that at that city council was to inspire people to stand up for their rights. And I just refused to cheapen it by selling it like a product. And I talked to my wife, and I talked it over with her, and we said, what can we do? And she just said, you need to run for office. You need to go into the political realm and make some changes there, because she said, I believe you have the ability to do that. And so we sat down and talked about it, explored all of the options, you know, mayor, city council. And then my wife said, why don't you run for lieutenant governor? She said, the job is perfect for you. And that's what we decided to do. And here we are.
So it sounds like that then this job, this thing that you're doing now, this lieutenant governor position, is almost like a calling.
I consider it to be. You know, people ask me all the time, they say, how do you like this job? And I tell them, a job was working at Steelcase. That was a job. You know, leaving that factory every day with my hands and back hurting, that was a job, and it was tough. This is a calling and a privilege. To be able to serve the people of North Carolina, to be able to help them have their voices heard, have their needs met, have their concerns addressed. This is a privilege and a calling. It really is. And it's not something that I take lightly by any means. And again, I don't really consider it to be a job. It really is like a calling, a duty, and a privilege.
You know, a noted author in leadership said, to be a good leader, you need to seek first to understand and then be understood. How hard has that been for you as Lieutenant Governor to get folks to understand?
It has not been at all, because we speak the language of the people we're serving. You know, I told someone one time, I said, you know, I'm North Carolina in all of its forms. You know, I've been everything. I've been the dishwasher, and I've been the quote CEO. I have been, I've served in the military. I know what it's like to lose a job. I know what it's like to be called into a room and sat down and tell you in X amount of weeks, you're not going to have a paycheck anymore. I know that pain. And I know what it's like to have to meet a payroll every month. I know what that's like, to see that day out there and have to count those pennies and realize, you know, hey, these people are depending on me for their paycheck. And I know what it's like, and I feel the pain and the success of the people of North Carolina. And because of that, it's not hard for me to speak their language. I don't have to sit down with some think tank and figure out what to say to people. I know what the issues are in this state because I've lived them. I've lived the issues. And we understand that without good government, it makes the life of the average citizen, it makes it very difficult, because a lot of issues that we talk about every day, a lot of decisions we make every day are doorstep decisions. There are things that are going to come to people's doorstep and affect them in their homes. And because of that, we don't take that lightly. And because of that, we're able to convey our message quite easily.
It's interesting looking at your background, and we're going to go to a break in just a few seconds here, but I want to kind of set up for coming back. I think it's going to be missed if we don't cover your journey as a child growing up and the challenges. And you talk a lot about your mother and the strength she had. So let's cover that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with the Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina, Mark Robinson. Stay tuned. We'll be back in one moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm J.W. Simmons, your host. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're talking with the Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina, Mark Robinson, the second highest elected position in the state. Mark, sometimes you have just got to sit down and think, wow, I'm Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina. Yes. And I say that with some candor because I want you, if you will, to speak to us about what I call your bringing up. That period of time that you remember that you were a young boy, you knew someone loved you and cared for you, you had siblings. Tell us about that and how that's impacted where you are today.
Well, I grew up in Greensboro, on the east side of Greensboro. My first recollections of life were in a little house on Logan Street there in Greensboro, a little red and green house. It's hard for me to imagine how small that house was. It was a 4-room house. There were 7 people in that house. And there was my mom and dad and me and 4 other children in that little house. It was tiny. We had, from what people would probably look at on the outside, would say a very difficult childhood. My father was much older than my mom. He drank heavily. They had a very violent relationship. He was very violent towards her. And we witnessed a lot of that violence as children. We were very poor. My mother did not work. My father, we survived off of his Social Security and welfare. From my earliest days, that's what I remember. We spent some time in the foster care system, but I was much too young to remember that. I was a baby. My first recollections were a number of years after we were reunited with my parents. I credit who I am to my mom because my dad died when I was young. My dad died when I was 12. which left us with my mom. Now, when my father died, my father had been largely responsible for everything in our household. He was responsible for us eating, the rent. He was responsible for everything. And when he died, I loved my mother, but I was terrified because I had no idea what would come of us. And my mom tells a story that after my father passed away, a well-meaning friend came to the house and told her, well, you know, your husband's dead. You have 5 children. You can sit back now and the government will send you checks. The welfare will take care of you. You don't have to do anything else. And the way she tells the story is that when the friend left, she closed the door and she thought, that's not what I'm going to do. And it's not what she did. We lived right across the street from North Carolina A&T State University. My mom walked over to the university, had a friend there. Her friend helped get her a job there as a custodian. And that's how my mom took care of us. And when I say she took care of us, I don't mean she just, fed us. She really took care of us. My mom gave us things that we had never had before. My mom bought a car. She bought a home. We had school clothes every year. We had school supplies every year. And my mom never had to go anywhere and ask anyone for anything. Now, when I told this story to a reporter a number of years ago, he said, well, she wouldn't be able to do that today because, the inflation, blah, 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 blah. And I corrected him. I said, no, I'm submitting to you. She would be able to do it because my mom taught me a great lesson. And unfortunately, it wasn't a lesson that I always followed. But when I learned how to follow it, I saw great success in my life. My mom had her priorities in order. When she got that paycheck from being a custodian, she bought food for the home, paid the rent, paid the house payment, paid the car payment, whatever she needed to pay. She put her priorities in order, and her priorities were what she needed, not what she wanted. Never did I ever see my mom go off and spend a lot of money on dresses or hair or nails. She was all about taking care of her children and building a household for her children. And that's exactly what she did. And like I said, I largely credit my mom for the man that I am now.
That's a unbelievable story, but I've got to believe that there's a lot of folks out there listening to your words today, and they're thinking how blessed they are in many ways.
Yes.
That journey moves us, I think, to try to rationalize in some way what's going on in our society today. And I know you've spoken quite a bit about that. What's happening not only in inner cities, but in a lot of areas in which there's just not this sense of desire. We've lost something. Help us understand, knowing your background, what you've seen to this point, what is that we've lost?
I think we've lost a lot of our, we've been sold a bill of goods by popular culture that tells you you're not supposed to work hard. You're not supposed to sweat. You're not supposed to come home tired. You're not supposed to, work 10 hours a day, 14 hours a day. And that the exact opposite is true. Hard work is what makes dreams happen. That's how, Amazon wasn't built because somebody wished it into existence. Great companies aren't built and great cities aren't built because people wish and hope. They're built because people work. They dream about things and then they get to work to make them happen. And that's one of the things that we need to continue to instill in our children. As the way to be successful in life is being willing to work for your dreams. A lot of times you turn a television set on and you see some guy on there that's rich and famous and it looks like he's got it all, but you see the end result. You don't see the years of hard work and sacrifice that it takes to get there. We need to remind our young people that that's what it takes to succeed. Hard work is what it takes to succeed. Even if we didn't have all the blessings that we have right now, all the modern advances that we have right now, you think about the people who came before us, how hard they just had to work to survive. I mean, they literally had to work just to survive. And now we have these advantages where not only if you work hard, you could survive, but absolutely thrive. And we need to remember that. And again, that's one of the things that my mom, the example that I got from my mom was a hard worker. She worked hard almost to the end of her life, and not necessarily because she had to. My mom had an easy way out, but she didn't take it. And because she didn't take that easy way out, she was able to pass down a fantastic legacy to her children.
And it's interesting when I look at that, and then I look at when you ran, You ran for lieutenant governor in a relatively crowded field.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you got over a third of the vote, which was almost, one article I read, you got more votes than the governor himself.
Well, and again, that came because of hard work. It came because of hard work. We started our campaign with $0 and ended it with not much more. But we worked hard. We did, I think we did 100, hit 99 out of 100 counties in a little over a month. We were going to 7 or 8 counties a day. And at the end of the day, we were dog tired, but we were satisfied because we knew we were working hard towards an end and making a difference. And again, it goes back to that, to work ethic. And that's what we were able to do in our campaign. And when I say we, I mean we. My staff was right there beside me on the road. They were right there beside us through all the difficult times. And we did it as a team. We committed ourselves to work hard every day. And because we did that, we came as political nobodies to win the second highest seat and a 9-way primary and come out without a runoff with very little money. Is a very impressive thing to do. And we were able to do it because we committed ourselves and we worked hard. And we think that's a great example for anybody.
I tend to look at it and I'm thinking back again to what you talked about earlier about the silent majority. Mm-hmm. If that silent majority speaks, they speak boldly and the results is bold results.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's going on in this nation right now, going on in this state right now is an awakening, literally. People are starting to see that the same old things in politics don't work. The same old things in business don't work. They're not falling for some of the same old narratives that they've been falling for years. People are really starting to wake up and realize that indeed this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we, the people, need to take the reins of this government and vote people in office who believe in the principles that made this state and this nation great. And I see that happening all over. It's just a matter of folks in the positions to have the courage to continue to push and to not only tell people that they're going to fight for those things, but when they get into office, actually do it. And like you said, and like in the military, like in combat, courage is a great encourager. You know, when you see that second lieutenant or that sergeant jump out of that foxhole under fire and wave his hand and say, let's go, it encourages those who might not be that bold to climb out and do the same. The same thing is true in this. When they see people out front willing to take the darts, the arrows, the hits, folks are willing to, then they come on and they're willing to speak up as well. And we saw that a lot during our primary, during our general, and we're seeing it now.
And sometimes it's almost like, to your point, that I look at it and the question would be, when you look back, do you see that silent majority growing? Is there more expectation on your part that will continue to engender the energy you need to move forward?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that we do in our capacity is we travel around to a lot of county conventions when they have them. This year was very encouraging. Even though we had a devastating loss on our side of the aisle with the presidency, it was very encouraging, even after that loss, to see how many new people are getting engaged in this process. Because I truly believe that's going to be the game changer in politics from here on out. That silent majority you speak of people who are just common sense folk who work hard every day, just want their rights and want things to run right, want their schools to be great, their police to be great. Those folks have been largely silent. The thing I would have to say about the silent majority is, and we're noticing this all over the country, they are not silent anymore. They're speaking up. They're speaking up at school boards, city councils, county commissioners, the state level. They're speaking up. They're desperate to have their voices heard, and they want to vote for people who are going to make sure that continues to happen.
We're going to go to another break in just a few seconds here. When we come back, I want to kind of set the stage for a discussion about some of those key issues that you have spoken about, to get your input on what you've seen. And also, again, from that silent majority, what you're hearing of what their expectations of Mark Robinson is. So we'll take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We want you to call a friend. We want you to stay tuned. We're talking with Mark Robinson, the Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina, about issues and matters that you face every day. And we'll be back in a moment.
Clinton Appliance and Furniture values your business, but we also want you to feel safe and stay healthy. So if you don't feel comfortable shopping in our store, we encourage you to shop online. Visit our website at www.clintonappliance.com. Browse our selections, ask questions, and get quotes. You can even set up deliveries and purchase by phone, all from the comfort of your own home. Clinton Appliance and Furniture.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Again, thank you for being with us today. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host. The name of the show is We Should Know. Our guest today is Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina, Mark Robinson, the second highest elected position in the state of North Carolina. Mark, you've labeled yourself as a patriot.
Yes.
Kind of unusual. Not only are you in the highest seat in the state, but you are the first lieutenant governor that could be labeled as being a person of color. Those 2 points, tell us how they come together, because typically, oftentimes, we don't see that as a plug-in. So help us understand. I'm sitting here talking to a patriot. I'm talking to the lieutenant governor of the state of North Carolina. I'm talking to an African-American male. And I'm trying to say, how does this work? Because oftentimes you don't hear that from.
Right. So if you're wanting to know how I became a conservative?
Yeah, because that patriot and conservative tends to kind of
go hand in hand.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Well, I guess I'll give you a short story on that. So I had a friend of mine one time. We had a conversation at my mom's house about a conservative radio host. And I made some comments about him. As a matter of fact, I called the man a racist. My friend, who was black and my best friend, he challenged me on that and said, how do you know he is? And I told him, well, everybody on television says he is. And he said, well, one time you told me that television doesn't tell the truth about black people. He said, if television's not telling the truth about black people in your mind, how do you know they're telling the truth about this fellow? And, I got angry at my friend. And I said, I'm going to set out to prove him wrong. I went out and bought this commentator's book and started reading it. And when I started reading that book, I discovered that I agreed with everything he was saying. In fact, I could have been reading my own words. And so I really didn't become a conservative. What I discovered was I had always been a conservative my entire life. I was reading in the pages of that book thoughts that I'd had since I was a small child. And I realized at that moment that I was indeed a conservative and that I was indeed a patriot of this nation. And that is what led to my political awakening. And that is what led me to get involved in politics, learn about the two parties, naturally fell on the right-hand side, the Republican side. And that's where I've been ever since. And I've been espousing those values and pushing those values and learning more and more about why I am who I am every day. But I would tell people unequivocally, I did not become a conservative. I discovered I was a conservative. I've been a conservative all my life because of the way I was raised.
That's so important. I wanted to get that out because, people will say, well, he switched or he did. You've been there from the grassroots. This is, as you just pointed out, a core part of you, which brings me to a part that's been going on, and you've addressed this, but I want to try to give you a little bit of, leeway to go where you want to. But in the world of education, which is so important, I was reviewing some footage of the late Colin Powell, and he was asked about education. And one of the things he mentioned with education that just struck me, and I wanted to bring it to you, and let's get your thoughts on it, that education literally starts when the mama's got that baby in her arms. Absolutely. And what happens around that child. And he somewhat didn't dismiss public education, but he said that's got to be gotten right. So tell us how that engenders and where we are with education today, because I know you got a lot of things going on in that area.
Well, that statement is absolutely true. Education is not just schooling. Education encompasses your entire experiences in life. I know someone right now that I've recently met. He is an expert Mason. I mean, this guy he's expert, and he's wanted all over the country for his skills in masonry. This man has never been inside a classroom in his life. He has never attended a public school. He is from Mexico, but he never attended school. He can read and write, but he is not, quote, educated. But this man understands the principles of masonry like no one I've ever met. And it's because he had an education in masonry from his father and his father before him. He grew up basically with bricks in his hand. So he understands that's how he was educated. Education is a crucial part of American life because, the Declaration of Independence speaks about the pursuit of happiness. We know what life is. We know what liberty is, but what is that pursuit of happiness? That's being able to chase your dreams. In the society that we live in, the crucial component of being able to chase your dreams is having an education, being able to read, being able to write, being able to do mathematics, being able to gain a skill. That starts with education. That's why I'm so passionate about education. And education is one of the reasons why I decided to take on this job. When I found out that I would be able to sit on the school board and have a voice there, I said that is definitely something I have to do because, again, education is crucial in this nation. It goes hand in hand with our founding principles.
Your position as Lieutenant Governor gives you a seat at a number of boards in the state, also in the Council of State, and it's huge. It seems to me that there's a lot of things that the Lieutenant Governor can do if he depends on somebody else telling him what to do or if he decides to do it himself. One of those things that you've decided, which has been out there, and I'm going to just toss this out and let you kind of help us understand better what's going on, is the whole idea of critical race theory in our schools. Now, we've got 2 school systems here in this county, and one of, I think, 5 or 6 in the state has two systems. But there seems to be a big sense of revolting about some of the things that folks are hearing about this CRT thing that's happening. Tell us what you've discovered as a result of that.
Well, in what I've discovered about critical race theory is, and this is why I consider it to be dangerous, not just to our education system, but to our society at large. Critical race theory comes from something called critical theory, not to be confused with critical thinking.
Right.
Critical theory. And critical theory came from something called the Frankfurt School, which is far left-leaning socialist thought. This ideology that it is not your choices in life, but society as a whole that determines how successful you'll be is a falsehood. It flies in the face of my story and so many others. And to introduce that kind of thought into our public schools is counterintuitive. In this nation, we have come so far on the issue of race. I mean, it would seem 150 years seems like a long time, but not when you think about how far we've come. I mean, we had a black president for 2 terms. In North Carolina, we have in this last election cycle, my election cycle, you had 2 black people running for the second highest seat in this state. We've come a long way. We've made great strides. We have learned how to educate ourselves with each other, serve in the military together, work with each other, break bread with each other, marry each other. And now we see this socialist movement to creep in something that's not going to move us forward, but move us backwards. To have young children sitting in the classroom looking at each other through suspicious eyes when they have none of that in them now, when we've driven that so far away from them and caused such unity in this nation, to let that come in is going to be dangerous. And that's why we stand firmly against those ideologies, because we know where they come from and we know what kind of fruit they will produce, not just in our classrooms, but in our society as a whole. We cannot allow those who want to divide us to let those things come in that would do that. We have to move forward under unity, because everything that this country's ever been through, whether it be the issue of slavery, whether it be Jim Crow, whether it be the rights of women, to make those things happen, to get past those things, to defeat those awful institutions, good people of all stripes and all colors came together to do that. And that's where we need to focus on. The successes we've had in this nation, the defeat of slavery, the defeat of Jim Crow, the defeat of the unfair treatment of women was done by people who love this country, love our Constitution. All those folks came together of all different stripes and defeated those things. That's what we need to be teaching our children. We do not need to be teaching them to be suspicious of each other, or teaching one person that they're better than the other, or one person that they should be suspicious of the other. What we need to be doing is telling the good story that in this nation, people of all stripes and all colors came together to defeat injustice.
The follow-up question I've got to that, and I'm going to kind of show that I know you know what this is, from the Office of the Governor, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, Indoctrination in North Carolina Public Education. And this is a summary document that folks can go online and look at. Mm-hmm. But it is literally research-based from all over the state, and I would encourage folks to look at some of the folks that is on this task force. Is there anything else that you can put out there that adds more credibility to information that I'm just trying to reach here, because I hear what you're saying, and again, I've had people to mention this to me. The information's there.
Yes. When we were on the campaign trail and we talked about school indoctrination, they ignored us.
Yeah.
When we got into office and announced that we were going to start this task force, they again tried to ignore us and tried to deride us. When we gathered this information and presented it to us, they tried to ridicule us and still tried to deny us and tell us that these things are not going on in the classroom, that we're not trying to introduce critical race theory, that we're not over-sexualizing our children. And we had been in a mode where we were considering our next steps, how we were going to present a lot of the detailed information contained within that we found in that task force. And it just so happens that some folks didn't like some comments that I made about some of that material, brought that to the media's attention. The media came to me and asked me about those comments, and we made it plain to them in words and pictures what we were talking about.
Let's take a quick break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to pick up exactly where we were when we come back from break, because we want to finish this commentary. Stay tuned, caller friend. We're talking to Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. We'll be back in one moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're coming up on our last segment here on We Should Know. We want to thank you for your comments. And as always, you can continue to send those to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. That's weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Very important to us on planning new shows, comments about shows that we've had. The show today that we're talking with Lieutenant Governor, certainly want your comments on that. Also, you can continue to send us emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. That email is critical, but the snail mail, the old post office where you take a card and put it in an envelope or write something on a card, folks still use that. Send that to Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Again, thank you for being with us, and we're talking with Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. Mark, as we went to break, and this is our last segment, I want you to elaborate a little bit on this critical race theory, and you talked about the idea of the indoctrination piece. Mm-hmm. One of the things we don't need to do, it seems I hear you saying, is to create shame or separation. It should be more about inclusivity and bringing folks together. Is that kind of the general observation?
More or less, yes. And we should be teaching our children that, yes, this nation had problems. And we had very contentious issues. But I think we need to be teaching our children how we overcame those issues. And the way we overcame those issues was together. There's not a problem in this nation that's ever been solved by one single solitary individual or group of people. It was people, good people of all stripes, who have come together to fight against injustice. And we always need to remind our children of that. And we certainly don't need to do anything counterintuitive to that. And I believe CRT does that.
In the process of that thinking, it's a challenge, and it must be a real challenge when you're speaking to a large group of people and you have certain clearly defined faith-based feelings. Once you express that, to try to help folks understand the difference, because there's things that we totally believe as Christians, and that deals with our eternal soul. And folks seem to try to isolate and use that as help us understand what you face with that, because you've been through some things recently.
Right. Well, I've been invited to speak at several churches around the state, and I had an occasion to speak at a church, and I was speaking about the issue of education. And I was speaking about some of the things that we have uncovered that are being presented to our children in one form or another. And I was expressing my displeasure over them. And I referred to those things as filthy. Well, the news media was made aware of that and tried to turn it into a referendum on me being somehow anti-homosexual or hating, quote, gay people and transgender people, and referring to those people as filth. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was not referring to any person as filth. What I was referring to is some of the materials that are being presented to our children, which is indeed filthy material. It is material that when we presented it at a press conference to the local news stations, some of those local news stations blurted out and would not show it on their television program. Now, if you can't show it on the local news, why are we presenting it to our children? And then the argument was also made that it's not part of the curriculum. Even though it may not be part of the curriculum, this stuff is available to children in a lot of places in the library. And it's recommended reading to children. And some of this imagery is downright pornographic. There have been people who have called for me to resign over those comments because I called presenting pornography to children filth. We have made it plain that we're not going to back down on this issue. Number one, as an elected official, it is my job, my duty to protect the constitutional rights of every person in this state, regardless of their lifestyle. And I intend to do that. I intend to stand up for the constitutional rights of every person in this state, even if their lifestyle is contrary to my faith-based beliefs. That's number one, because they have the right to live their lives and be safe and secure in their lives. But number two, we're also going to keep our children safe. And there are certain things that should not be presented to our children. If those materials are going to be presented to any one of those subjects going to be brought to our children, that needs to be handled in the home, not in the public education system. And number three, we have a right as Americans to our deeply held religious convictions. I have a right to espouse my deeply held religious convictions inside a faith-based institution like a church. I have the right to those opinions. I have the right to those beliefs. And it does not mean that because I have those beliefs that I'm going to violate anyone's constitutional rights or treat anyone unfairly. In fact, from where I sit, it would cause me to do the exact opposite. It would compel me to follow the law and treat people fairly. And so those are the three things that we continue to fight for. That religious liberty, to stand up for your constitutionally given faith-based beliefs, and to stand up firmly for our children's safety. Absolutely, their safety in public schools, because the public school is a public trust. When we send our children off to school, we certainly don't expect them to go encounter pornographic material. And that other top priority is making sure that our children are educated. We should not be in the practice of indoctrinating our children. We need to be teaching our children to read and write and do arithmetic. In this state, we spend half of our state budget on education, yet we are failing at a primary level to even teach our children to read at a grade level. That is a very sad commentary and something that we need to change in a hurry. And as an elected official, that's one of the things that I'm bound and determined to make happen.
One thing you mentioned that leads me to this question is the whole idea of justice and rights and law enforcement. You've been fairly outspoken on that. Give us commentary now of what you're feeling as somewhat of the leader of the majority.
Well, here it is. I spoke about those constitutionally guaranteed, deeply held religious beliefs that I have. I have those rights. And I've challenged the media. I'll challenge anybody. Tell me when, as a lieutenant governor, I have either promoted the idea that we should violate someone's constitutional rights, or when I have violated someone's constitutional rights because of my deeply held religious convictions. I would submit to you that I have not, and I have never promoted the idea that someone's rights have been violated. Now, on the opposite side of the aisle from me, we can't say the same. Folks on the opposite side of the aisle from me have violated the constitutional rights of North Carolinians by telling them that they can't go to church because of their political beliefs. Folks on the opposite side of the aisle from me have been derelict in their duty to carry out their duty in this state to prosecute domestic terrorists who we witnessed burn down Raleigh, commit acts of vandalism on the streets in Greensboro and Winston-Salem and places. A couple of summers ago, we saw those riots going on. Yet and still, they were eager to prosecute people who commit the acts on January 6th. So they've been derelict in their duty right here in this state to protect this state from domestic terrorists right here. It all boils down to doing the right thing. My constitutional right to express myself religiously is guaranteed, but it does not mean that I'm going to violate anybody else's constitutional rights. And it should compel me to do my duty while I'm in office. And that's what we're telling folks. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to stand up for everybody's rights, but we're also not going to back off of our principles.
We've seen that, and we got a couple of minutes left. I was going to try to squeeze this in. I got so much I want to talk about. The whole idea of the need for mental health with public schools, with universities. We've seen school systems take a mental health break day. We've seen universities shut down so students can have behavioral health support. What's going on there? What do you see that maybe we're not seeing?
I'm going to boil it down to this. And mental health, make no mistake about it, mental health is extremely important. And we always need to make sure that the mental health of everybody in this state is looked after. But the bottom line in our schools have no discipline left. They have no discipline left. There's a systemic problem of violence in our schools that needs to be looked at. There's a great fear amongst our teachers. Teachers have expressed this to me. They are afraid to go into the classroom because there's no discipline left. No organization can be successful without discipline. No organization can be successful without having a solid set of rules that keeps law and order. And our schools, sad to say, are losing the way. I think that's why we're seeing so much chaos in our schools right now, because there is no more discipline left. There are very few institutions in education where people are saying this will not be tolerated. And that's what we need to bring back in school. We need to bring some discipline back into the classrooms, and we need to bring it back across the board and let people know that, sure, we're concerned about everybody's mental health, but we're also concerned about law and order and safety inside the walls of these schools.
And one of the things that I'm hearing you say, and correct me here if I'm missing it, but is that freedom is great, but even freedom has boundaries.
It doesn't have boundaries. Freedom doesn't really have boundaries. What freedom takes is responsibility. You have the right to free speech, but you have to accept the responsibility of free speech. I like to say it like this. Responsibility is the fuel that drives freedom. The more responsible you are, the freer you will find yourself. That's in every aspect of your life, whether it be in education, whether it be in your business, whether it be financially. It doesn't matter what segment it is. The more responsibility you show in life, the freer you're going to be, the more choices you're going to have, the more luxury you're going to have in life, because responsibility is what drives freedom. So I wouldn't call it boundaries. I would call it responsibilities. And responsibilities start with guidance when you're young.
We want to thank you for being with us today, and it's more conversation and understanding that I think will continue to bring us together. We wish you good fortune and luck in the future. Look forward to having you again.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week on We Should Know. Call a friend, stay tuned. We'll be back later on Tuesday. God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.